21 Spine-chilling Walmart horror stories. Exposed secrets from late-night haunting trips. Jessica had always believed Walmart was a safe haven for late-night shoppers, a slice of small-town life nestled among the shadows of a decaying Chicago suburb. But as she stepped through those automatic doors each evening, the fluorescent lights flickered ominously above her head, casting long, haunting shadows that made her skin crawl. She had heard whispers of what happened when the clock struck midnight, of rustling aisles that seemed to breathe and move when no one was looking. The tales curled around her like tendrils of smoke, missing persons, ghostly figures, and eerie sounds that echoed through the empty store. The first time she noticed the missing person flyers plastered around the entrance, her heart sank. "Jessica, did you hear about the guy who vanished last week?" her coworker asked, eyes wide with fear. She brushed it off, chalking it up to boredom-breeding rumors. But as the shifts wore on, a churning dread nestled deep in her gut. She found herself peering around corners as she stocked shelves, the once familiar aisles morphing into garish labyrinths. "What's wrong, Mom?" Kyle had asked her one night, a frown creasing his young face. "You seem different." She had waved his concern away, her own mind racing at the thought of what could happen if she left him alone too long. One dull Tuesday night, as another uneventful shift dragged on, Jessica overheard hushed voices near the break room. Peeking around the corner, she saw her manager in a heated discussion with a shadowy, unfamiliar face. Their glances were furtive, their expressions tight. The store's past, whispered in grim tones, sent an icy chill through Jessica. Could it be true? Were they hiding something? Then, a clattering sound broke her thoughts. The alarm blared, echoing through the darkened aisles like a death knell. The automatic doors slammed shut, a harsh reminder that they were trapped inside. Panic spread through the remaining customers, and Jessica's heart raced. Something was off. Her instincts screamed that they were not alone. Muffled voices echoed in the aisles. She could feel a presence lurking, something sinister. How long had it been since the last disappearance? Clutching at her apron, she glanced nervously around the store. The fluorescent lights pulsed, flickering in an unsettling rhythm. A customer, a nervous young man, had just stepped into the nearby aisle, and then he was gone. Just like that. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jessica's mind raced back to the tales of the store's haunted history, and the employees that had come and gone, dropped off like so many forgotten items on the shelves. As she approached the storage room, footsteps echoed ominously behind her. A cold sweat coated her palms. She hesitated before pushing the door open, the dread coiling tighter with each moment. Adrenaline pumped through her veins. If she didn't uncover the truth now, how might it affect Kyle? Shadows danced on the walls, whispering secrets as she stood on the precipice of something horrible. The very air turned thick as she realized, what if the stories were more than just local lore? What if something truly dark lay within the very walls that had become her second home? There was no turning back now. The footsteps grew louder behind her, and with her heart in her throat, she stepped into the darkened storage room, ready to face whatever nightmare awaited her. The moment Jessica stepped inside the storage room, her senses erupted. The darkness enveloped her like a heavy blanket, and she squinted to make sense of her surroundings. Boxes towered precariously, creating jagged shapes that loomed like silent sentinels, guarding something forbidden. She strained to hear over the frantic beating of her heart, praying the echoes of her footsteps wouldn't alert whatever lurked in the shadows. Then silence. It crept in like a predator, wrapping its icy fingers around her. A musty smell choked her nostrils, old, stale air mixed with something metallic and rotten. She took a shaky breath, ready to bolt if necessary, when a sudden scrape of metal drew her attention to a far corner. A flicker of movement caught her eye. "Hello?" she called out, her voice wavering. No answer. Just the oppressive silence pressing down on her. Jessica stepped deeper, drawn by the whispers she could now faintly discern. They tickled the back of her mind, telling her to run. But she needed answers, not just for herself, but for Kyle. A shape shivered in the dim light, a figure low to the ground, crouched behind a stack of cardboard boxes. Fear splintered through her, and she edged closer, compelled by a mix of dread and curiosity. As she leaned in, the figure turned quickly, eyes wide and wild. It was the young man from earlier, the one who had vanished into the aisle. His lips parted in a silent scream, sheer terror painted across his face. "They're coming, Jessica. We need to hide," he gasped, the urgency in his voice sending a shiver down her spine. Who's coming?" she managed to choke out. But before he could respond, the lights above flickered violently, then dimmed to an insidious glow. Shadows writhed across the walls, and Jessica felt the oppressive weight of something dark lurking just beyond her sight. "Hide!" he hissed again, pushing her behind a stack of boxes. He crouched low, his breath shallow, trembling. As she pressed against the cardboard, every muscle in her body screamed to escape, but she stayed, a prisoner of her own curiosity. What was going on? Why was he so terrified? Suddenly, the door swung open with a force that knocked items off the shelves. Jessica's heart raced as she glanced through the small gap between the boxes. Figures entered the room, shrouded in shadows, their movements sinuous and unnatural. Their faces were obscured, but she sensed their malicious intent, something primal that ignited a fire of panic in her chest. They whispered among themselves, voices dripping with dark promises, the words slithering into her mind like snakes. "Another will join us tonight," one murmured, and the very air turned frigid as dread coiled around Jessica's heart. Why was she being hunted? More importantly, who were these people? She caught the young man's eye, imploring him to offer some hope, but his face was contorted in sheer panic. "Do you want to end up like the others?" he whispered, trembling. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the front of the store, a distraction. The figures turned in unison, their movements fluid and coordinated. Jessica seized the moment. She pulled the young man up and dashed toward the far exit, adrenaline coursing through her veins. But the door shut tight, locked. She banged on it, heart pounding against her ribs, desperate to escape. As she turned back to the room, she caught a glimpse of the figures looming closer, faces now illuminated, twisted, grotesque, more monster than human. "Run!" the young man shouted. But as they bolted toward the only other exit, something pulled Jessica back, a force she couldn't see. It stung against her skin, tugging mercilessly. That gut-wrenching scream echoed through the storage room, the young man's voice blending with the whispers as darkness closed in around her. Would she become another ghost in the aisles of Walmart, lost to the shadows? With everything at stake, and the figures creeping closer, Jessica felt fear pierce through her like a knife as she realized she might never leave this nightmarish pit. What would they do to her if they caught her? And in that frozen moment, she understood the terror of those stories she had laughed off. But then, the ground beneath her trembled, and she noticed a flicker of light from the far end of the room, a glimmer of hope or a beacon of more horror. Jessica fought against the grip that held her back, determined to find out. But as her vision blurred from fear, she felt a chilling whisper slither into her ear. "Join us." The ground rumbled, a low, menacing growl that vibrated through her body. Jessica strained against the unseen force, desperation clawing at her throat. The cacophony of whispers surged, swirling around her mind, drowning out her thoughts. "Join us." The voice was seductive, promising something dark and unfathomable. "Come on!" she screamed at the young man, panic racing through her veins as the figures closed in, shadows thickening like fog. He stumbled toward her, eyes darting, a primal instinct flickering behind his fear. "We have to get to the light," he urged, diving for the dim flicker at the other end of the room. He gripped her hand, pulling her with him. The whispers intensified, a chorus of longing that sent icy fingers down her spine. "Help us," they beckoned, each word soaked in a twisted sense of yearning. The shadows morphed around them, the outlines of twisted limbs reaching, grasping, pulling, but she felt the terror of the figures more than their touch. As they sprinted past the boxes, the lights flickered violently again. Panic clawed at her heart. Would they really catch her? Would she really join whatever lay behind those twisted faces? The light at the end of the room grew brighter as if it were a sun trying to burst through a storm. They pressed on, the jagged silhouettes of the figures behind them flaring in sudden pulses, highlighting their grotesque features. Jessica glanced over her shoulder and froze. One was closer than she imagined, an elongated arm extending toward her with ragged fingers tipped in darkened claws. Fear slickened her throat. "Run faster!" she shouted, adrenaline surging. She matched his frantic pace, both of them fully aware that whatever awaited them beyond that light might be better than what threatened to engulf them now. But as they pushed through the final stretch, their strides became heavier, as if the air had thickened into molasses. Every step felt like wading through a nightmare. The doorway loomed larger, the bright flicker at the edges drawing her in, promising safety and salvation. Suddenly, the young man broke away, spinning to face the pursuing darkness. "Jessica! Go! I can't hold them!" His voice echoed with desperation, an unbearable weight topping every word. He looked at her, pleading. "No! We go together!" she shouted, her own voice breaking, battling the instinct to flee. She reached for him, but something unseen ripped him back, shadows converging like a storm, swallowing him into the dark abyss without hesitation. "No!" Jessica screamed. Her heart shattered as she turned back to the light, the last flicker of hope winking in her vision. As she dashed forward, the air was thick with screams, his, joined by the others who once thrived in that darkness. The figures surged, the whispers morphing into a cacophony of rage and hunger. Jessica flung herself towards the light, arms outstretched, fingers brushing against the warmth just beyond reach. Would she too be ripped away from the world she knew? Would she scream forever, lost among the shadows? Just as she thought she might never reach it, a hand snatched her wrist, a hand that felt warm, solid, pulling her through the threshold. But as she stumbled through, the bright glow turned, shifted, and with a sickening twist, the light shattered into a million dark shards. She landed hard on the cold ground, surrounded by flickering fluorescent lights dimming quickly, revealing rows and rows of shopping carts stacked like tombstones. Her breath hitched. Where was she? Was this another trap? Behind her, a voice echoed, muffled and distorted. "Welcome to the other side, Jessica." The smile that stretched across her face was full of malice, familiar yet alien. It was the face of the young man, the one she tried to save. "Didn't you want to know the truth? Join us." The horror of realization enveloped her, and as she looked around, the shadows began to creep back toward her, hungry, waiting. Could she fight this darkness, or was she simply another addition to the twisted collection of lost souls? What truth lay hidden among the whispers? And would she find the answers before it was too late? The air felt electric with terror, vibrating with an intensity that squeezed Jessica's chest. Shadows leered from the corners, their intentions clear as they thickened around her. The young man's face melted away in her memory, replaced by the dread that clawed at her sanity. She was alone again, trapped between the razor-thin veil of safety and the nightmare lurking behind her. "Join us," the words echoed in her mind, wrapping around her like a snake. She peered into the darkness where the voice seemed to twist and coil. Was it truly him, or a malignant reflection of her fears? "Get a grip," she whispered to herself, forcing her legs into movement. Jessica edged along the line of shopping carts, their metal frames casting grotesque reflections under the flickering lights. Was this truly the other side? She had thought light meant hope. But here, light only used to expose a hellish reality. A sudden noise made her freeze. The sound of wheels turning echoed in the silence. She spun around, heart racing, but there was nothing, only darkness swallowing the aisle behind her. She took a deep breath, wrestling with the urge to scream. Ahead, an exit sign flickered. Jessica's instincts screamed at her to move, to not let the shadows catch her again. She darted down the aisle, the fluorescent lights casting menacing shadows that seemed to writhe and twist in response to her panic. Each turn felt deliberate, as if the shadows were playing a cruel game, leading her deeper into the abyss. The exit sign brightened, shining like a beacon. Yet, as she drew closer, a whisper snaked through the air like smoke curling around flames. "Stay with us, become one of us." She shook her head fiercely. "No!" Her voice was barely a whisper, but the conviction carried through the noise of despair. The last thing she needed was to give in. The shadows flickered, reacting to her defiance, as if they were alive, angry that she resisted their pull. In a desperate bid, she sprinted toward the sign, heart pounding as dread wrestled with hope inside her. Just a few more feet. No! Not again! The shadows roared, and suddenly, a figure shot out from the dark, glistening eyes reflecting her terror. It was the young man, no longer pleading, but snarling, his face twisted into a mask of fury and hurt. "You think you can run? We're all just waiting for you." Jessica bolted past him, feeling a cold sweat accumulate along her brow. The exit was so close, yet so far. The whispers merged into screeching howls, filling her ears with despair. She couldn't look back. She could only focus on the glow, the elusive promise of freedom. As she plunged through the swinging doors, they slammed shut behind her with a resonating finality. She stumbled into the bright parking lot, gasping for air. But the moment of relief was short-lived. An icy wind whipped around her, the whispers amplifying in intensity, curling into her thoughts. "Now you're ours." Jessica spun on her heel, adrenaline flooding her veins. The lights in the parking lot flickered erratically, casting long, spiraling shadows that danced along her legs. Something was off. The cars parked around her seemed to pulse like they were alive, their forms shifting, contorting. Before she could process, a figure stepped forward from the shadows of a car, grinning wide. It was the young man, but now surrounded by others, their eyes gleaming like hungry animals. "You can't escape the truth, Jessica. You need to join us before it's too late." Her breath caught in her throat. This was just the beginning. The truth was more terrifying than she could imagine. What other horrors awaited her outside? Would there be a way back, or had she left behind her humanity in the dark? "Help us!" the chorus began again, echoing and reverberating into the cold night. Panic surged inside her, as she felt the shadows creeping ever closer. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The dark was alive with hunger. And they were more than just whispers now. They were a force, hungry to consume her very essence. What would she have to become to survive this night? A shiver ran down her spine as she glanced behind her, knowing she had made a choice. And it was only the beginning. The shadows closed in around Jessica, their hunger palpable, each whisper clawing at her resolve. Panic threaded through her limbs, anchoring her in place as the young man stepped forward, his followers flanking him with fervent anticipation. She could feel their eyes on her, piercing through the rising tide of her fear. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, her voice shaking, desperate to break the suffocating tension. "What do you want?" The young man's lips peeled back in a sinister smile, revealing jagged teeth that glinted unnaturally in the flickering light. "You know exactly what we want. You've always known." Jessica's mind raced as memories began to flood back uncertain whispers during sleepless nights, moments when the darkness in her heart felt almost comforting. Not now. Not here. With a sudden burst of resolve, she stepped back, her back hitting the cold frame of a nearby car. Steel against flesh felt solid, grounding. "No! I want to join you." His laughter was a cacophony of malice, echoing in the night air. "You think you can refuse us? We are the truth that lives in your darkest thoughts. You're one of us, Jessica. You always have been." It's only a matter of time. Adrenaline surged as she turned, bolting toward the nearest vehicle, a white sedan. With trembling hands, she yanked on the door handle. It clicked open, but her moment of triumph was short-lived. The back seat swarmed with shadows, darkness coiling like smoke, reaching for her, clawing at the edges of her consciousness. She slammed the door shut, heart hammering against her ribs. With no time to process, Jessica darted behind another car, hoping to hide, to plan her escape. She could hear their footsteps, a chorus of soft thuds against the asphalt, the rhythm of a predator drawing closer. Fragments of their murmurs lapped at her ears. Come to us, join the darkness, you can't escape. With every breath, the whispers coiled tighter, suffocating her thoughts. Panic spiraled within her, urging her to act. She scanned the lot for an escape route, eyes darting between the shadows that writhed like living creatures beneath the parking lot lights. "Isn't this what you want?" The voice lilted mockingly from behind her, and Jessica's heart dropped. It was another figure, emerging from the darkness. It was a woman with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes, a cruel smirk etched across her ashen face. "To be part of us? It's freeing, Jessica. You've felt it." "No!" she screamed, reeling from the sight. A wave of despair crashed over her, threatening to pull her under. The night was a trap, and she was its prey. The shadows surged forward, drawn to her like moths to a flame, their intensity igniting fear that scorched her insides. The white sedan suddenly shuddered, as if recognizing the chaos too, its engine sputtering to life with a roar. For a heartbeat, hope flared. Jessica glanced toward it just as another figure lunged from the shadows. Hands clawed at her arm, trying to pull her back into the darkness. "Join us," they growled, desperation and hunger in their voices merging into a horrific symphony. With a surge of strength, fueled by sheer panic, she pulled free and sprinted toward the sedan. Time blurred as she lunged for the door, flinging it open as the figure behind her shouted, "You can't outrun fate!" The moment she slid into the driver's seat, her fingers found the ignition, twisting it desperately. The engine roared to life, drowning out the chorus of shadows behind her. She hit the gas hard, lurching forward just as hands slammed against the window. But she could still hear their cries over the car's growl. "You'll be back! You'll never be free!" As she barreled out of the parking lot, eyes wide, heart racing, Jessica had one question echoing in her mind. Was this really freedom or just a temporary escape from a nightmare that wouldn't let go? The road ahead darkened, and she felt the weight of the shadows inching closer. What was waiting around the corner? Had she truly escaped, or had she only traded one prison for another? The headlights sliced through the darkness, revealing nothing but a winding road edged with trees that loomed like sentinels, their branches gnarled and twisted. Jessica's grip tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles paling under pressure. The engine purred beneath her, yet fear coiled around her body like a noose. With every mile, she could feel the shadows at her back, still whispering, still hungry. The road ahead seemed to pulse, alive with uncertainty. She glanced at the rearview mirror, breath hitching as the reflections distorted, the dark shapes of her pursuers blurring into nothingness, at least for now. They were still after her. Their essence was woven into her very thoughts, an unshakable bond like a thorn in her mind. What if they found her again? What if she couldn't escape this? The thought was drenched in dread. Jessica fumbled for her phone, heart racing at the prospect of reaching someone, anyone. But as she swiped the screen, déjà vu hit her like a wave. The signal flickered, sputtering like an old lamp. No! Not again! She punched the steering wheel. Her eyes darted back to the road, widening at the sight of a figure emerging between the trees, a woman, swaying as if caught in a trance. The shadows around her pulsed, dark tendrils flickering at the edges, clinging to her like a lover bidding farewell. Jessica's breath quickened, every instinct screaming for her to drive past, to leave the figure behind. But the woman raised her hand, as if she had the power to halt an oncoming storm. "Help me!" Her voice was a chill that clawed at Jessica, desperation lacing her words. Jessica hesitated, torn between fear and empathy. Do I trust her? What if she's leading me right back to them? But the plea felt familiar, echoed in the void Charlotte had left behind. There's something in her, Jessica whispered to herself. I can't abandon her. She skidded to a stop, heart pounding like a war drum. Shaking off the shroud of fear, she stepped out, cold air biting into her skin like icy fingers. Get in! Jessica yelled, feeling a tendril of hope fight against the suffocating fear. The woman stumbled toward her, glassy-eyed. Jessica could see the shadows dancing behind her, slinking and writhing as if tethered to her very soul. As the woman reached the car, Jessica gasped. The woman's mouth curled into a knowing grin, revealing teeth too pointed, too sharp. "You're exactly what we need, no! Get away from me!" Jessica's mind screamed as she stepped back, dread crashing down. But it was too late. Dark wisps shot from the woman, slashing through the air, wrapping around Jessica's wrists, and pulling her closer. The shadows surged, eager to envelop her once more. Panic hit again like a freight train. She wrestled against the grip, heart racing as she fought with every ounce of strength. "Let me go!" The darkness whispered into her mind, murmuring promises of release and belonging. "You can't escape your true self, Jessica. You're meant for this." With a burst of wild desperation, she twisted free, diving back into the car. The shadows clawed at her, but the door slammed shut as she twisted the ignition again. The engine coughed violently, sputtering, rebellious against the intrusion of the gloom. "You'll never be free," echoed in her mind, as she fought for dominance over the car. The woman stood outside, still smiling, the shadows swirling like a tempest around her. "You think you can run? Join us, it's inevitable." As Jessica's foot pressed down hard on the gas, she felt the world around her blur into a cacophony of screams, promises, and anguish. The road twisted ahead, warping with every thump of her heart. What would happen if she really did turn around? Would they show her a world she longed for, or would they pull her into the depths of despair? The trees whipped past, ominous and wild, and she turned a corner sharply, hoping against hope that she could leave it all behind. But shadows danced at the edge of her vision, and she knew, deep down, the battle for her soul was just beginning. The truth waited in the dark. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay at the end of this road, it was only the harbinger of something worse. A haunting tether pulled tight, like a noose waiting to snap. And as she sped into the void, one question burned in her mind: how far would she go to escape the darkness within her? The tires screeched against asphalt, a desperate plea for control as Jessica accelerated. The pounding in her chest matched the rhythm of the car. The shadows twisted in her rearview mirror, mocking her retreat, but she pushed the pedal to the floor, the speedometer climbing, defiance igniting within. Then, an unnatural silence fell. The whir of the engine grew faint, fading into an eerie quiet as if the world itself was holding its breath. Jessica's heart thudded louder, a drum heralding her impending doom. She shot a glance to the right, half expecting the woman with the twisted smile to materialize next to her, but instead, the trees loomed larger, closer. Their branches reached out like skeletal hands, clawing at the darkness. Jessica steadied her breathing, forcing her mind to focus. "You're safe, just keep driving," she told herself, but doubt ebbed at her resolve. The shadows inched forward from the back seat, whispering secrets into her ears, drowning her thoughts in a torrent of despair. "You'll never escape your hours." Suddenly, headlights pierced the night. A car! Relief washed over her, but then dread settled in. What if it was one of them? Panic clawed at her throat as she glanced in the rearview mirror, the darkness behind her swirling with anticipation. "Just a little longer," she whispered, gripping the wheel. But the shadows morphed into faces, familiar and distorted. Charlotte's face twisted into agony, hands reaching out, pleading for help. "You left me, Jessica." "No!" she screamed, shaking her head to clear the hallucination. But the vision was unrelenting, pounding in her mind as the trees blurred in a dizzying rush around her. "Get out! Get out!" Her foot slipped, and for a heartbeat, she veered into oncoming traffic. The headlights of an approaching truck loomed large, but she reacted, wrenching the wheel just in time. The truck barreled past, blaring its horn, drowning out the shadows, if only for a moment. But now the car began to stutter, sputtering like her breath. "No, no, no!" She swerved, desperately watching the gauge drop. The speedometer rose and fell like her frantic hope, one agonizing heartbeat after another. The gas light flickered ominously, a cruel reminder that she was running on empty in more ways than one. "Stay calm," she shouted at herself. She couldn't die here. Not like this. Desperation clawed at her insides, making her stomach churn. She needed a plan, something to save her from the clutches of shadow. Light glowed faintly ahead a diner, its neon sign buzzing. It was a lifeline, a beacon in the desolation. Ignoring the surge of dread, she veered toward it, praying it would welcome her into its warmth. She skidded into the parking lot, flinging open the door, heart racing, legs unsteady. The diner's interior was dim, a flickering bulb overhead casting warped shadows on the checkered floor. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling as she stepped inside. The air was thick with greasy food and stale coffee, familiar and unsettling. An old man at the counter turned slowly, his expression blank, eyes hollow. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, voice like gravel. Panic crashed over her. "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the darkened windows. "They're watching you. Always." The diner felt like a trap as the shadows outside began to gather, pressing against the glass like a lost soul searching for a way out. "Get out!" Her instincts cried, but the shadows whispered sweetly, luring her with promises of acceptance. "Join us, be one of us, no!" The word tore from her throat as she took a step back. But it wasn't just the shadows anymore. The old man rose, revealing a twisted grin, teeth sharp as daggers. "You're already ours." Jessica spun, rushing for the door, but it was jammed shut. Terror seized her, wrapping her in a cocoon of dread. She beat against the wood, desperate, but it wouldn't budge. As the shadows melted through the windows, encircling her in a thick haze, one final thought chilled her. No matter how fast she ran, the darkness was always right there, waiting for her, hungry for another piece of her soul. Is the darkness within her stronger than her will to escape? As the shadows close in, what will she choose? Jessica's heartbeat echoed in her ears as her desperate fists battered the door. "Let me out!" she screamed, voice cracking under the weight of her fear. The shadows thickened, coiling around her limbs like serpents, pulling her toward the inky void. "Stay, join us," the soft voices hissed, tapping into her deepest fears and regrets. Charlotte's distorted image flashed before her again, a tormented reminder of her abandonment. "You can't escape." Suddenly, the shadows solidified, and figures emerged, ghostly echoing the faces of friends she lost. "Help me," they whispered, fingers curling around her wrists, as if trying to pull her into the darkness. "No!" A surge of adrenaline ignited, and she yanked her arms free, eyes wild. She spun around, the old man's eyes gleaming with malice. He was the keeper of this cursed place, a gatekeeper of a nightmare she hadn't yet comprehended. "Foolish girl," he crooned, voice slick with malice. "You think you can outrun what's inside you? It's already too late." Shaking, she searched for anything to break the suffocating grip of despair. A flicker of hope danced as she caught sight of a slender window at the far end. With every ounce of strength left, she threw herself toward it, the glass shimmering like a portal to salvation. "Get back!" the old man barked, lunging forward, but Jessica didn't hesitate. She dove through the window glass, splintering around her like a burst of freedom. The night air hit her like a slap, sharp and cold, but the relief was short-lived. She landed hard on the asphalt, gasping, heart racing even faster than before. But the shadows drifted outside the diner like smoke, reaching for her, hungry to reclaim their prize. Jessica scrambled to her feet, glancing back at the diner. The old man stood at the window, grinning as the shadows swirled around him. He was not just a man. He was the embodiment of everything she feared. "No more!" she shouted to the night, pumping her legs into a sprint, fueled by a surge of instinctual terror. She hadn't come all this way just to surrender now. As she raced down the road, the shadows swirled around her like a dark tempest, whispering her name. "Jessica, Jessica," they sang. Each taunt slid beneath her skin, sending a chill spiraling through her spine. "Stop it! Leave me alone!" she screamed, breath burning in her throat. Her eyes darted across the landscape, searching for refuge as the trees closed in on either side. The world seemed to conspire against her, branches and underbrush grasping at her legs, trying to trip her up. An old farmhouse loomed ahead, its door slightly ajar. It beckoned like a siren's song amidst the chaos. Please, just a place to hide, she thought, adrenaline fueling her resolve. She barreled through the door, slamming it shut behind her, the sound reverberating with finality. The inside was dark, abandoned, but her heart thundered with the sweet taste of temporary salvation. The shadows pressed against the walls outside, clawing for entry. They changed shapes, morphing into silhouettes of the people she once adored, her family, friends twisted with sorrow and rage. You left us, they chorused. You're part of us now. Jessica stumbled backward, panic rising once again. The old man's words echoed hauntingly in her mind. The darkness was everywhere, and it was hers to contend with. She needed to think, to stand her ground against this nightmare. Then she heard a faint crack, like bones snapping, emerging from the darkness of the corners. A shadow lurked just beyond her vision, larger than the others, creeping closer, every millimeter a reminder of the encroaching dread. Fight it! She yelled, trying to rally her resolve, but the certainty within her crumbled as the shadow took form. What was it? A collection of everything that haunted her? Fear turned to ice in her veins as she felt the familiar pull, the yearning to submit, to join her loved ones in the dark, to give in to the oblivion that awaited. Jessica, it called, familiar yet terrible. Jessica, come home. The echo of her name lingered in the air, and as the shadow reached toward her, she felt its coldness stretching, threatening to envelop her. Would she yield to the darkness, or could she find a way to break free once again? Time slowed as she contemplated her next move. The walls of the farmhouse seemed to close in, the past rushing back like a flood, gaining momentum with every choice she made. In the depths of her soul, a fierce light ignited. I can't go back, she whispered. The weight of despair bore down as she prepared for the confrontation, but she wasn't ready to give up. As the shadow lunged, clawing towards her, Jessica braced herself for what was to come. Would she endure the pull of the memories, the weight of fading connections? The heart-stopping question hung in the air like a ticking clock. Would she find the strength to combat the horrors of her past? Or was it too late for salvation? Jessica stumbled back, her heart racing wildly as the shadow advanced. It loomed larger, darker, exuding a chill that seeped deep into her bones. A desperate thought echoed in her mind. I have to remember. The walls of the farmhouse felt like they were closing in, memories fighting to break free from the shackles of her fear. She couldn't let the darkness consume her. The hushed whispers of her loved ones twisted her heart, taunting and coaxing. You're safe here, Jessica, you belong with us. No! She shouted, a raw scream that shattered the suffocating silence around her. With a sudden clarity, she reached deep into her memories, searching for the anchor that could ground her. Flickers of laughter, stolen moments of joy, fragments of love swirled in her mind, a collage of everything she had lost. Each memory burned bright, pushing back against the encroaching shadow. Jessica, the shadow hissed, the distorted voices now laced with urgency. You're one of us. Given it would be easy, but that's just it, she thought. It was easy to succumb, to let go of the fight. Yet that wasn't who she was. I will not be your prisoner. With a sudden rush of defiance, she lunged forward, the walls vibrating as she pushed past the shade that threatened to envelop her. In that moment, she felt a surge of warmth, a flicker of light shielded her from the shadow's icy grasp. It recoiled, shrieking as the light caught it, twisting and warping it back into the darkness. But she was far from safe. A door at the back of the room caught her eye, barely visible in the murky shadows. Without thinking, she dashed towards it, not daring to look back. Her hand grasped the tarnished handle, twisting it violently. With a violent shove, she opened the door. It creaked in protest but yielded to the force of her desperation. She flew into a narrow hallway that smelled of must and mold. Each breath felt like a struggle, the air thickening with foreboding. Echoes of the couple that used to live here played in her mind like a warped record, arguments, laughter, cries. Was one of them trapped here too? Or was it just the house's lingering pain? The walls pulsed, heartbeat-like, urging her to move faster. She raced through the dark corridor, each step pounding against the floorboards, desperately searching for any sign of escape. But the shadows were relentless. They surged behind her, sending chilling whispers that clawed at her sanity. "Run, you can't hide, we are always watching," her heart thundered louder as she fumbled toward an exit. Just then, a booming roar erupted behind her, drowning out the whispers, the shrieks, the chaos. Jessica turned to see the shadow thickening, taking on a monstrous form. Eyes gleamed red from the darkness, staring with an empty hunger. Panic surged as she sprinted, and finally burst through a door at the end of the hallway. She tumbled out into the open night, gasping, but her relief turned to horror when she realized she hadn't escaped. The farmhouse stood eerily quiet. The shadows swirled around, gathering at the door she had just exited, eager and ready. "You think you can escape?" they sang, the voices of her lost friends blending into a hollow melody, chilling and sweet. "You've only just begun, find us in the distance." An ominous fog curled toward the ground, swallowing everything in its wake. Jessica's breath hitched. The world around her felt warped, like a nightmare that clung fiercely to her reality. Where could she go now? The darkness seemed to stretch infinitely. "Jessica," the call was unmistakable, a voice, her mother's. "Find us, please." Frozen with dread, Jessica glanced back toward the farmhouse. The shadows surged in a dark wave, merging under the moonlight. She could feel the pull, the urgent need to turn back. Was there really a way out? Or was she destined to return to the nightmares she tried to flee? Swallowing her fear, she turned to the fog, knowing even if she didn't truly want to, she had to move. What awaited her in the depths? Would there be refuge or only more darkness? "Just don't look back," she thought, but the whispers followed as she stepped forward. The night stretched before her, shadowy and thick. But she knew nothing would stop until the truth was faced, even if it meant stepping into the unknown one last time. And all the while, a chilling thought lingered: what if the real horrors weren't out there, but waited inside her own heart? The world around Jessica sharpened into focus as she stepped into the dense fog, each breath bringing clarity. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, threatening to drag her back. She pushed forward, heart pounding, fortified by a fierce determination that burned bright amid the darkness. Each step felt heavy, a weight of the past pressing down, but she would not allow them to consume her. "You've come this far," she whispered to herself, the shadows flickering behind her like dark memories escaping from the depths. They called her name with chilling familiarity, echoing with the lost hopes of those who had disappeared. "Jessica, come home." There it was again, her mother's voice, a siren song that threatened to pull her back into the depths. She clamped her hands over her ears, drowning out the sound with her own cries. "No! I want to listen! You're not real!" As she moved deeper into the fog, the air thickened, swirling like a tempest around her. Darkness pressed close, almost tangible, but something shifted in her, a resolve ignited by love, loss, and the fierce will to survive. She was not here to join them. She needed to confront the darkness she had run from. Ahead, shapes began to emerge, flickering like dying stars. Figures twisted within the fog, their features a blend of the lost, friends, loved ones, each face etched with sorrow. "Why did you leave us, Jessica?" they murmured, voices intertwining into a haunting melody. But amidst the sorrow and questions, Jessica found a glimmer of strength. "I had to survive, I had to keep moving for Kyle." The name shot through her like an arrow, igniting a fierce blaze of purpose. He was her anchor, the light in her life that she refused to let slip away. Suddenly, a familiar figure stepped forth, as if drawn from her deepest memories. It was Charlotte, her smile warm but eyes filled with regret. "Jessica, you have to come with us." "No!" Jessica's voice rang out like a bell in the silence. "I don't want this. I want to abandon my life." The shadows surged, the figures swelling with fury. "You can't escape who you are," they growled, claws reaching out, seeking to drag her down into eternal despair. But beneath the layers of fear, a deeper truth began to unfold. Jessica focused hard, summoning every happy memory, every laugh shared, every hug exchanged. She had faced darkness before, had battled fear and doubt within herself. And now, with every flicker of light she remembered, she turned back to face the encroaching shadow. "You need me," But I don't need to be part of you, she yelled defiantly, illuminating her voice with a rare strength. My past doesn't define me. In that moment, something shifted. The shadows recoiled, dissipating into mist, as if her determination had forced them to back down. You're stronger than us, Charlotte echoed, fading before her eyes, and the others followed, their forms dissolving into nothingness. With a rush of freedom overwhelming her, Jessica felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Everything shifted as she propelled herself forward, her heart racing not with fear now, but with fierce hope. Ahead lay a path illuminated by an otherworldly glow. The fog receded, revealing a clearing that seemed almost ethereal. She stepped into the clearing, and the light enveloped her. It felt warm, soothing like a long-lost embrace. In that space, she could hear the faint laughter of Kyle, his innocent giggles drifting into the air like music. Mom! Where are you? Here, baby, I'm here! She shouted, tears streaming down her face as she sprinted toward the sound. As she breached the edge of the horror, stepping out into a verdant clearing dotted with wildflowers, everything rushed forward. The fears, the darkness, the shadows fell behind like remnants of a nightmare banished by the dawn. She finally felt free. Kyle stood a few feet away, eyes wide with innocence. As she wrapped her arms around him, a peaceful warmth radiated through them both. Mom, I was so scared, he whispered, and in that moment, everything she fought for flooded back with clarity. Me too, sweetheart, but it's over now, she assured him, feeling the dark remnants of her haunting fade. The chains of despair had been shattered, leaving nothing but the promise of a better tomorrow in their wake. No longer haunted by the whispers of the past or the shadows that promised her something she refused to accept, she embraced Kyle tightly, feeling the depths of her love shelter her from the darkness. Together, they turned from the clearing, stepping forward into the glow of a new horizon. As they walked, the whispers lost their power, their hold broken, and Jessica finally felt hope weave through her heart, not just for her but for Kyle, too. I'm never letting go again, Jessica vowed, as the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating their path toward a future that was only beginning. And as they walked hand in hand, they left the darkness behind, a story of fear and courage that would become a reminder, a testament to fighting through the shadows to find the light. Now, if this story resonated with you, you need to subscribe now so you won't miss our next exclusive tales. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and let us know you love the content. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories about Jessica's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support keeps the stories coming.